So I have been working on the edge of this tool tray, and so I use the table saw to cut grooves in it, and this board also has a rabbet in it, so it will slide into that slot. I will be working on getting this attached onto the legs, but I realized that since the tabletop is now on the legs and everything's lined up, I can start to drill holes in the top. Very exciting. So I have the first one drilled here. This is for a bench dog, and there will be one, I have to figure out the spacing, but there will be a row of holes here, and then there will be a couple other holes on the table for holdfast of the same size. Yesterday I came out and worked on this bench, but I did not have my camera with me, so I wasn't able to film some steps. But the tool tray is in, and you see there are two dowels right there, and all that you need to do to loosen this is you lift up. You can dump whatever chips there are. There was a significant bow in this, or twist, so this corner was much higher than that corner over there. So at the suggestion of my dad, on the bottom here, I put a board that actually has a forced, it's convex, so it forced a little bit of the twist out, and that goes. Let me flip it over. So here's the tool tray flipped up. You can see the dowels coming through the bottom, and then with some spacers, and then this is that diagonal convex board, and it took the twist right out. So I'm very happy with that. I also drilled holes in the top. Right here I'm going to install a planing stop. So I've drilled from the top and I've mostly chiseled it out, and then I will flip it over and work on the other side. So this is a block of wood that will slide up and down in this hole, and on top of this block of wood will be this piece of metal from Bench Crafted, and this will be a stop for planing. I had to chisel out, one of these holes was here, and I had to chisel that out, but I don't have to worry about putting a dog there when I have the planing stop there. I have some other holes that I put in for using holdfasts. There's some holes in the leg for the same purpose. And then right now what I'm working on is I'm working on these right here. I don't know what you call, I've heard people call them handles. I call them dog legs, but maybe that's totally wrong. So it's a piece of ash, and then this is a piece of cherry that's octagonalized, and then there's a screw holding it on, and this is drilled out. So to make these, I've had to make a couple of them over the years, and this is the method I use. I have a squared up piece of cherry, and let me set this down here. So I already drilled the holes in there. It's much easier to do that now. I used a Forstner bit, and then I will, it was in the wagon vise here, just to octagonalize it, and then once it's all octagonalized, I will chop it in half with a saw, and that should fit nicely on this piece here. So that's for the leg vise. The back of the leg vise is this piece right here. So this is a piece of ash that is just sets in here, and if you lift this up, let's see if I can do that for you. You can see that there's just a groove and a tongue, and then a corresponding groove on the underside of the table. And so when this gets wiggled together, it's it's very strong. It's a very strong setup, but it's just held together by gravity. And there's a similar setup down there at the bottom. So that will be the back of the vise. And then, so that's a piece of ash. This is another piece of ash. This will be the actual chop of the vise that moves back and forth on the wooden screw. So I just have the planing stop and then that vise to finish, and then I'm ready to put oil and varnish on this. So these ends for the dog leg are now done, and soon I will be working on changing the shape of this chop so that it has straight but then has a little bit of a taper, and then has a two little coves cut out of the bottom. So these ends, like I said, they're drilled out, and then I shaped the outside and put some little bevels on the bottom, and then they just slide right on the end there. These will be glued on because there's a little bit of a crack in both of them. So this is the leg vise, and the glue is in here drying, so it's stuck in this position. But underneath here we have the nut, and if you can see, there's a recess in the leg that prevents the nut from twisting. So that was chiseled out. And there's two screws that hold the nut into the back of the vise here. So I've started to cut the slot for the parallel guide in the vise, so that this area here will be taken out, and this is the parallel guide. So this will run back and forth in that slot, and it will be attached to the chop. So it will be attached to the chop, and then as the chop moves back and forth, this guide will move back and forth in that slot. I finished cutting and chiseling this slot. So the idea is that this will run back and forth in that slot and will be the parallel guide for the vise. So I'm ready to attach the parallel guide to the face of the vise, or the chop of the vise. And so I have it in its mortise, and I am about to drive these wedges in. So once again, I was out here for a day or two without this camera, so I did some steps that I didn't record. But right now, the second coat of the finish that I put on the table is drying on all the various components. They're kind of scattered throughout the room. We have the tabletop, the leg vise screw, the wagon vise screw, back of the wagon vise, or the leg vise nut, the end cap for the wagon vise. The wedges I did not put any finish on because I didn't want to, I wanted to make sure that there was as much friction as possible. Here we have the majority of the big pieces. This is the leg vise, and you can see that that ash popped really nicely. This is a piece of maple that came from the attic of my parents' house, and it seems like it also came out very nicely. What I used for this finish was 3 parts. Was 1 part mineral spirits. There's the end cap. The other end cap, I'm in the process of putting it back on. I used 3 things for the mixture. I used boiled linseed oil, I used mineral spirits, and I used this Epiphany's product. I used their rubbed effect varnish, which is really not meant for this. It's meant for putting on top of a more traditional spar varnish, but I haven't used it for a long time because I have seen no need to put it over a traditional spar varnish on anything, and this is a way to use it up. So I will eventually get this back together and it will be dry, and then I will show you that and show you it in action. So the workbench is all put together. The second coat is pretty much dry, and all of the parts are installed and working well. So on our leg vise, this opens up. There's a parallel guide down there. I have yet to get a bolt to go in those holes, but then you can put it in the correct hole for the width you're working with, and then that will hold your piece of work. This right here is the garter. It's an internal garter. You take this out, and then you can move this whole thing independent of the screw. So you put that in there so that you can take, when you unscrew the screw, the vise moves out. We have our wagon vise. I put paste wax that's usually used on furniture. I put that on these screws to help with their motion. I have some holes in the leg for holdfasts. Those will be for holdfast storage, and then if I'm planing a long board on the edge, I can put it in the leg vise and use the holdfast to hold it on. And the last thing that I put in here is this. This is a planing stop, and it extends underneath the bench straight down, and it's friction fit. You're supposed to only be able to move it with a mallet. I can move it with my hand, but it doesn't move. And it has these teeth so that you can plane a board without having to clamp it. So I'll show you that. Okay, so this planing stop, when it's all the way down, it's recessed just below the table so it doesn't hurt your plane. When you're ready for it, you can whack it up however high you need. And then, let's say you wanted to plane this board. Slide it in there, and you take your plane, and you'd start planing. This teaches good planing technique because you have to push in line with the board. And this is also nice because if you're working with something much thinner than this, if you put it in the tail vise or the wagon vise, you could bend it if you pinch it on either side. This does not do that. If you don't like how much it moves around, you can make one of these, which is just a right angle cut. A thin piece of wood. Use your hold fast over here. Come look at the top. Maybe for this shot, come over there. You put it right on that corner. Give it a whack. That, you don't need to be that close. Back up, please. As far back as you can. And you can still plane in line, but you can also plane at 45, or even across. Though it might shake a little bit if you go across. That's good. So this planing stop, when it's all the way down, it's just below the tabletop, so it doesn't hit your planes. And to bring it up, you just whack the bottom a couple times, get it to the right height. And if I wanted to plane this block of wood, all I would need to do is set it against the teeth and then start planing it. If I'm dealing with a really wide board, or I want to go across the grain, then I can take this bird's mouth right here and I just give the hold fast a good whack. And now I can still plane with the grain, or at 45 degrees. Or even across. And this doesn't really put any tension on the board, which if you're planing a really thin board, if you squeeze it on either end, then it will flex up and you won't get an accurate flat edge. And this lets you just easily take it out, take a look, and then place it back in. No problems. All right, well, thank you all for watching. This has been quite a learning experience for me and hopefully for you. Total time, this took me about 85 hours or so. And I learned a lot about joinery in the process, and about laminations, and just about using hand tools for stuff I would normally use power tools for. So that was pretty awesome. It's nice how strong these tusk tenons are, especially when that leg vise is in the side. And it's amazing that a table that is held together with gravity and gravity and wedges is strong enough to do some serious woodwork on. So thanks, and I hope you enjoyed, and maybe I'll see you on another video.